Good afternoon, everyone. This is episode number 27 of Mini Ice Age Conversations. Brought to you by Omega Garden, a revolutionary, internationally patented Rotary hydroponic system. The Farmdominium, a revolutionary vertical farming design, incorporates the Rotary hydroponic system, and as being set, will meet the demands of the world's food consumption. And this is yet another solution that we will need to couple together. There is no single one solution for this problem. We will need a plethora of solutions combined. This is another piece to the puzzle. You can visit the website omegagarden.com for more information. That is MOEGAGARDEN.com. And in today's episode, I talk with Inventor Lee Wheelbarger about electrical phenomenon continuing to increase in intensity across his planet, and how we're going to be moving agriculture indoors with all these new growing facilities, how governments are preparing, and also the re-emergence of railroads. As the economy shrinks, it'll be the cheapest form of transport and delivery. And I really feel that you're going to get a great amount of value understanding where the economy is going to move and where your opportunity is in the grand scheme of the changes that are encompassing our planet. And these changes that are coming, they're here now. It's not any longer conjecture. It was 2.5 or 3 years ago when I first started, and I intuitively knew after I saw John Casey's talks that explained why we had the losses in Myanmar. That was intuitively my sixth sense saying, this person has the answer for you right here. Unexplainable losses of cold in tropical countries. And in John Casey's work, it was still up in the air. Was it intensifying? Was it really happening? How deep are we going to go into the cooling? How intense is this onset going to be? Questions have been answered now. The prediction from a few others is we're going to be under 25 sunspots for this entire next cycle, which will diminish down to 0 over solar cycle 26. But this next solar cycle is not going to ramp up at the very maximum 25. And the way they count the sunspots, that's including the new count of the new 1 pixel equals a sunspot new count that they've revamped. But we're going to stay right in the 25 sunspot range. It's here, it's intensifying, and all of you listening can see with your own eyes these changes that are inexplicable around where you live in your own neighborhoods. You've noticed these changes these last year, specifically these last 6 months. If you're asking the question why, you start to need to think about exponential increase. What you're seeing in your local regional area is just going to intensify from here. So think what it might be if it's double. And then take that and then double it again. So what would it be if it was 4 times more intense than it is today? Not just each year it's going to get a little worse, but we're going into this kind of exponential increasing where 2024, in my opinion, will be something at least 12 to 15 times more intense than it is today. We're talking about the snowstorms coming through. This snowpack in the Sierras is at 63 feet. If we go back even 5 years into the snowpack, they had 0 snow one year, which they were so worried about the drought wasn't going to refill any reservoirs. They had almost no snowpack, very little snow, and then all of a sudden it's 63 feet. So they went from 0 to 63. These are the kind of increases that are going to be accompanying this. The amount of floods, the amount of wind damage, the amount of UV coming down, the UV spectrum. When I was a kid, hey, stay inside because it would be up in the 8s. 9s would be an exceptionally high reading. Now it's pushing into 22. You know, all these changes are coming, and you just need to prepare yourself regionally. See what fits for you. Stepping into this permaculture lifestyle, we're not all going to step in the exact same direction with the same length of step. Everything is not going to be correct for every person. You're going to have to find your own foray. What do you really enjoy doing? Some people love woodworking. Some people love planting gardens. Other people like processing what they find, and after they like harvesting it and turning it into food. And some people like preparing the soil. Others don't. You're going to have to find what you like to do. Maybe you like to build a cob house. Maybe you like to use natural building materials to build a structure, whatever. You're going to have to find what suits you best. And by everybody finding their own personal passion inside the movement toward this more sustainable lifestyle, that's where the true freedom is. A, you're going to do what you love, and B, it's going to help everybody.
There will come a time in this where everybody is going to have a skill of some type other than being like a computer programmer or something of that nature. Because if we go through a Carrington-type event, that type of infrastructure will not be present anymore. And if so, only in extremely limited areas for years to come. That will be a very crippling event for basically every country in the higher latitude, be it the northern or the southern, and could even be, way farther down in the lower latitude regions, down as far as into Cuba or Central America. Then it also will depend upon where the Earth's rotation is and the actual geometry or the size of the CME that comes out of the flare. So we will see that type of event because they go hand in hand with this type of event. And how we'll fare through that remains to be seen. But if you don't have a plan in place for dealing with that type of event, be it for producing power or food or transportation for you, your family, and your corporation, then you haven't done all of the planning that you need to do to be prepared for what the transitions of our climate and this planet are about to go through.
So we can compare things into the future going on of intensity and intensification and amplification of these different, what would seem to be disconnected dots of the volcanism and the storm intensity and the electrical activity and the electrical storms and plasma discharges and all these things and the cooling oceans. And we can just see how it's going to affect into the future. Let's compare it to 2 years from now, and then we could get a direct correlation of how much has changed in these short periods of time.
Yeah, and we've already seen just in the past 3 months, things that I predicted for later on in the year have already happened just 90 days later. Yeah, I'm very interested in seeing how fast these things progress and seeing what we get in the future, because we will see increased cloud nucleation. We will continue to see colder temperatures. And we will continue to see things in the sky that no one has ever seen before. In most cases, by most people, completely unexplainable. But when you understand what's actually transpiring in the heavens above you, it's pretty unique to be able to see and understand and know what's coming. That's the difference between being prepared and being scared. If you are prepared and know what's going on, you can deal with it. If you're scared, then you've got a real problem. That's what our goal here is, as far as I'm concerned, is so that people can prepare and deal and adapt to what is coming.
All these disconnected ideas are now connected so you can see how the future is going to unfold. The average time for somebody to go to work, 30 minutes. Can you imagine a disruption in the fuel system, how that's going to put a dent into just the economy by people not being able to get to work?
Forget that. Look at heating their houses. The fuel oil that is required to keep their homes warm. You have to look at the hundreds of millions of people who still heat their house with a furnace or with fuel oil or natural gas. When the lines along the New Madrid fault become severed, half of or a quarter of the population of the United States, if it's during winter months, no matter when you look at it, will be requiring heat, and they will not have it. They will not have gasoline for their cars. They will not have LP. They will not have electricity in some cases because of the destruction of the infrastructure of the power grid. There's massive amounts of devastation that will take place because of just the event. So the ripple effects that come off of this, or the spinoffs, whatever you want to call them, are going to be devastating on both sides of that, for food supplies, for parts supplies, for essential fuel. All of that will be disrupted in a staggering proportion, biblical type of event. And there are many biblical events that are about to unfold when you look at what is possible with the cloud cover, with the volcanic activity, and with the earthquake activity, and then with the weather capability and the refraction of the TSI from the cloud cover. I'm expecting snow in Florida every year. When you look at what is required to sustain them, and, the rules of three, you can live for 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Well, where are they in 90 days? It takes 90 days to grow something to eat, basically.
How many people even know how to sprout their own sprouts in their house? Whole ton of seeds laying in their freezer or wherever, stock cabinet, and they could starve to death because they don't know how to.
Right, but then you still got to be able to get that water to them. You still got to be able to keep them at a temperature where they can grow. You still got to have all of that other environment that goes along with that. That if you're in a colder climate, that's not going to happen. The basement's 65 degrees and no light down there. What are you doing?
I've been interviewing all these people because I'm looking for the solutions. Like Ted Marchildon over, he has Omega Gardens. You might want to check this out. Super interesting thing. Omega Gardens. It's based on the I Ching. It's a barrel that has 8 interior sides and a central light going down, and the barrel rotates. So the plants try to re-upright themselves that rotates around once an hour. So every 8 minutes, the plants try to re-upright themselves because they're in an awkward position. So by them bending, the cells actually enlarge. So when they come up to the upright position, it makes the plants grow 5 times faster, nutrient content's higher. There's all these benefits, and they can hit that exact target part of the plant, which I was talking about. They're talking about doing wheat without the stem inside these things. Omega Garden Systems, and then the guys that are doing aerial farms, which is the vertical farming inside the buildings you're talking about, and then the fish growing type of people right down in the southeast U.S. They're North Carolina, Virginia area. They have shrimp and fish farming on a system like this that recirculates the water, indoor, everything indoor for protein. So I see a coupling of all these systems.
Yeah, there will be. That's what I'm getting at, is that all of these systems are going to need power. All of these systems are going to need clean water. And, I actually have a system that will go with all of these other systems to provide that power. What can actually be done in the almost non-existent amount of time we have left? There are only a limited number of options of what we can do. And indoor growing and containerized growing are the only options. There is nothing else that we can do. So many, many, many different disciplines that you have to look at simultaneously and to be able to calculate their minute effects and how that affects everything else. It's kind of like a pile of gravel in the back of a truck, and somebody comes up and runs into the back of the truck. You know where all the pieces of gravel are in the pile, but when somebody hits the back of that truck, how are all those pieces of gravel going to move? And you got to calculate that. And it's exactly this. It's not as complex as doing all of the pieces of gravel simultaneously, but it's about the same thing because every little itty bitty thing plays an itty bitty part to make it all go. It's kind of like a Swiss watch.
20 of the most integral pieces together into a formula and come out with at least best case scenario. Now, I'm curious, just one last question here. You talked about government officials wanting to listen to the conversation. How open are they to new ideas, and how much do they really know about what the changes are coming up?
Well, everybody under the Obama administration didn't want to hear it. In fact, if you said anything about this, you got blackballed. You were dead meat. Now, Casey and some other people have been briefing Trump on what's going on. And then I found out that Casey and a few other people were going to Washington and had made some briefings. And then, of course, people on the cold on, the global warming side, they went, Trump knows better. The problem that we have is it doesn't matter if Trump is on board, and it doesn't matter if Trump knows about it. We're so close to the edge of catastrophic change that it's going to take a monumental effort like that of World War II, the entire country getting together and uniting to try to save our country and to save our society, that if we don't come together like that, we will not survive with any large numbers. It will become a situation of every man for himself, and it will be total mayhem for 90 days at least.
Can we bring everybody together like that during these unusual times? It worked for World War II. I know the society was very different back then, but can it work again? Can we get everybody on the same page? Because I know Tim Ball was another one of the advisors over there for Trump. Get everybody together again instantly. I mean, and get them all on the same page and allocate all these resources. And you know what? There was this report coming up, Chinese military spending $180 billion this year for their military budget. Almost all of it was for refitting and revamping their equipment. They weren't even into buying new things. They were into the revamp and redesign and whatever of their equipment. That goes right along with what the Russians are doing, getting their snow buggies ready.
What people don't realize is the reason that Putin went into Crimea was so as that he could hold that body of water between Crimea and Russia on both sides of that. And then once he held that, then he had a position of intelligence and a position for intercept into the capital of Ukraine so as that he could continue to annex more and more of Ukraine so as that he could have a breadbasket to produce more food for Russia, because Putin for a number of years has known that this is going to happen, and that has been what has been pushing him. If you look at the moves that Putin has been making in regards to the relationships that he's trying to establish, the areas that he is trying to annex, they are all agricultural type areas or for a strategic tactical advantage. And other countries around the world are doing the same thing. You were talking about the rail lines that China is building in Africa. Saudi Arabia has purchased land in southwestern part of the United States. So there are a lot of that type of who's moving where to do what going on. And the U.S., because of the Obama administration, has been oblivious to all of it. And that is going to be extremely detrimental to the U.S. economy, because there has been no preparation up to this point, whereas that we could have been preparing for 10 years. So I think that the U.S. is behind the curve. I feel that the U.S. is capable of great things under great leadership. I actually think that lecture would be highly educational for you. When I quoted Dr. Kirby, what he said is in that lecture. I would suggest that when you watch it, you have to read between the lines and pay close attention to the verbiage that Kirby uses. So when he talks about things that are exquisite correlation, and when he talks about, I don't understand why these papers weren't published, this is great work. And then when he talks about Heinrich Finsmark, and when he talks about, we're in the steepest decline of anything since going into the Maunder minimum, and we know that, and that's one of the things he says, we know that this is what happened and what caused it. That right there tells you that he knows what's going on, but because of funding streams and political times at the time of the filming of the video or lecture, that he is somewhat restricted in being able to give complete, comprehensive answers. And he says in the beginning of it, I'm not here to give you any answers, but yet some things he was quite definitive on, and the things that he is quite definitive on are the points that you need to pay close attention to. So when he says, we know this, and this is established, and this is a perfect representation, and these guys did great work, those are all points that he is professing, and those are things that should be taken note of because of their relevance directly and the amount of their relevance in what's taking place. That is definitely one of the best eye-opening videos, you know what I mean, and does it so eloquently. The hail, look at the hail, what it's destroyed already in China, what it's already destroyed in the United States and already destroyed in other countries over in Europe. Greenhouses aren't going to be able to sustain that. And once that starts happening on a mass scale, people are going to realize greenhouses aren't the answer, and they're going to have to be secure structures, or they're going to have to be shipping containers. And all of those are going to have a power system that will be able to survive that type of onslaught from the weather. And the only way to be able to do that is going to be with wind, solar, and battery banks. Generators are going to be out of the question because diesel fuel and gasoline and natural gas will be unreliable. And, you know, when the power goes out, the lights go out, and it gets cold, you just lost everything in the container. That's not an option. There's a lot of things that need to be done, and they need to be done in short order because the time is much, much faster approaching. You know, when we talk about, I thought that we would not see the electromagnetic pulse from the sun until somewhere between 2020 and 2023. But the rate of decline is much steeper now than it was in the beginning. So now we're talking about possibility of that magnetic field change in 2018. That's a huge difference. There's no time and there's no security. And it's like you were saying, you know, those countries aren't going to allow you to stay there. If you're not a citizen of that country, they're not going to allow you to be there. They don't care how much money you've got. That's their country, and they want their food for their people and their land. So you're absolutely right. The exodus will start, but there will be restrictions on all forms of transportation. That was done through a executive order through Obama, that in the event of a space weather type event, that he takes over all assets owned by American citizens, including their bank account. If you have your money in a bank in the United States that's FDI insured, and there is a catastrophic event, and the U.S. government needs your car, or they need your farm, or they need your house, or they need your weapons, or they need your food supply, they have the right to come in and take it. If you own a busing company, they can come take your buses. If you own a railroad, they can take that too. And, you know, as far as investment, the thing that people need to invest in is railroad. Because when all of this catastrophic damage does take place across the United States, the railroad will be brought back online the most rapidly because of their people already on there supporting the line. So the railroad will be brought back up, and the majority of the transportation will be going by rail. And rail lines are now, you know, being expanded all over the United States. Buffett, other people are buying in and putting money in, expanding those rail lines and putting in double mains as opposed to a single main track to increase traffic. That's what's going to save this country as far as getting supplies back and forth across the United States, because a single locomotive is equivalent to 300 tractor trailers. Single large train going down the track. A train is equivalent to a tractor trailer that gets 34 miles to the gallon. So that is the most efficient way to transport goods and the most reliable across the country. and it will be the fastest brought back online. The rail service will be able to deal with the interruptions going across the United States much better than the truck transportation will, because the rail will just divert further east and further west from the affected areas, and they'll get a bridge or two back up, and then they'll keep them extremely busy, and then they'll route everything else to the north and south. The problem with the south is that when it does get down into the Louisiana areas, it'll have to come north up to Atlanta and then come back down, because they've never replaced the rail lines that Katrina took out across Louisiana and Mississippi and parts of Florida there. The rail would be an industry to invest in the United States. And it's like you said on one of your shows, it's the people who understand what is going on and leverage themselves correctly for the coming events are the people who survive and thrive in the coming days. And there are lives lost and millionaires made. And those who are prepared are the ones that are the millionaires made, and those who are not, well, they're in the other category.
And when you talk about the confiscation of assets are available from the government, I don't think that's going to happen in Tennessee. I don't think they've been down there, and those people will not accept that. And they're all armed to the teeth, and they have their community groups that are already set. And I don't think the U.S. government is going to come marching into Tennessee and say, give me your farm and we're taking all your food. 60 people around the periphery going, no way.
Right. And then there's places that will transpire, but there are other places where the people will just throw up their arms and go, okay. It's the rurals that will be doing the fighting against that type of tyranny. But if you're in Tennessee and you own a bus company, and the U.S. government wants that bus company, they will show up in their armed personnel and take those buses. If you're in Tennessee and you own a granary, and your granary is full of grain, the U.S. government will come in and seize that granary and put it on trains and haul it away.
Now, that's if they get through the resistance, because the people would consider that their own food, and I think they would come together and be like, no, we'll decide this, and who the last man standing gets to keep the grain. And I think it would really go down to that.
It will go down to that at a certain point, yes. You're absolutely right. I'm talking about where, let's say that we have a major earthquake up through the New Madrid Fault. That major earthquake, there are people up there who are starving. People up there don't have supplies. The government needs more corn. They'll just show up at the granary with the trucks or the train and let it right on, and the public will never know anything about it. They just showed up. There is no pre-warning that they did that. And they'll just seize here and they'll seize there, and they'll do it as all small stuff to start with, and then they'll make it, bigger, and it's helping everybody, all these poor starving people, it's a good thing, there's plenty to go around. We just need this. That'll all happen in the beginning, and it'll happen, somewhat just like that. As it gets worse, and the granaries aren't full, and the fields aren't producing, and people realize that, hey, this is really screwed up, and we got to keep this grain for ourselves. Once there is that collaboration between the members of the community and saying, hey, we got to stand up for our own, and we're not going to let the government come in and do that. Once that is established, then yes, they're going to fight to the death over this is our grain. But when it first starts happening, the government's going to come in and start seizing stuff here and there, different assets, fuel supplies, and all kinds of things, as they declare them necessary for national security to maintain the security infrastructure and the order of the United States, and what's good for the government to be able to withstand this, as well as to sustain the population to withstand this. It doesn't matter. All of the governments in the world can come together. All of them can be in a complete agreement with what is about to transpire, and all of them can be in complete agreement to put 100% of all of their effort.
And I do want to thank you so much for taking your valuable time. I know there's so many other things you can do, but I believe this is the most important issue of our lifetime, and that's why I spend my free time creating these podcasts, the video channel Adapt 2030 on YouTube, and then a follow-up on oilseedcrops.org for some of the written articles about these very same things with PDFs and timelines going out, plus a full resource page to help you follow these climatic changes and find areas that are holding these types of news repositories that aren't making it to the mainstream media. And join me for episode number 28 when I talk to Sasha Dobler, who wrote an incredible book about changes in the 13th century and the grand solar minimum effects they experienced, cataloged, and the artists of the day, how they represented all of these comets and changes coming through the atmosphere, as well as really what happened to their crops at that time during the Wolf minimum. See you then.